Welcome back to LexTalk. Exploring English and linguistics in Thailand. Can you believe it? It's our season finale already, episode 10. This season has flown by.
It really has. We've covered so much ground. From classroom dynamics to that fascinating research on language acquisition, we've really gone deep.
We have. And speaking of going deep, last episode we were all about error correction.
Right.
When to correct, how to make it a positive thing for learners.
Oh, the feedback on that one was amazing. Really seemed to hit a nerve with a lot of our listeners.
Definitely a hot topic. But for our grand finale, we're switching gears a bit.
Hmm.
Today, it's all about balance.
Yeah.
Specifically, finding that balance between the four core English skills. Speaking, listening, reading, and writing.
Absolutely. Something that educators, parents, really anyone involved with English learning in Thailand knows is a real challenge.
It's like that saying, all work and no play. You might end up with a student who can ace a grammar test, but can they actually have a conversation? Can they watch a movie and understand it? What about writing a story that grabs you?
Exactly. You need all the pieces working together. It's this idea of skill integration, right? It's not enough to just master the individual skills. You have to weave them together, almost like creating a tapestry of fluency.
Okay, I love that, a tapestry of fluency. So help me unpack this a bit. Why is this integration so crucial? What happens when we don't prioritize it? Like, what's the real-world impact?
Well, imagine a student who is brilliant at reading and writing, aced all the grammar tests, writes amazing essays, but then you put them in a real-life situation, ordering food, asking for directions, just having a chat, and they completely freeze up.
Oh, I've seen that so many times. And it's tough to watch because you can see they have the knowledge. It's just that they haven't had the chance to really apply it in a real conversation.
Exactly. And then on the other hand, you might have a student who's incredibly fluent, super expressive when they speak English, but then ask them to write a paragraph, and it's a struggle.
Right. They hit a wall when it comes to those academic or professional situations where writing is key.
And it's not just about communication breakdowns either. Research actually shows that integrating skills helps with cognitive processing. Learners who practice all four skills develop a deeper understanding of the language as a whole, and they're better able to transfer that knowledge from one skill to another.
It's like cross-training for your brain. So, okay, we've established that this skill integration is essential. But how do we actually achieve it? Especially here in Thailand, where English learners face some pretty unique challenges.
Let's break it down. Each skill has its own hurdles. Take speaking, for example. For many Thai learners, shyness and the fear of making mistakes are huge obstacles.
I hear this all the time from teachers and students.
Mhm.
It's a cultural factor that we can't ignore. But what can we do about it? How do we create a classroom where students feel confident speaking up?
It's about shifting the focus. Early on, it's more important to prioritize fluency over accuracy. Get them talking, even if their grammar isn't perfect. Create a safe space, where making mistakes is part of learning, not something to be ashamed of.
So true. And I think things like role-playing, debates, even impromptu speaking can be really effective. It forces them to think on their feet and use the language spontaneously.
Definitely. And don't forget about positive reinforcement. Celebrating those small wins and praising their effort can go a long way in building confidence.
Great points. Okay, so let's shift to listening. What are some challenges that are specific to Thai learners when it comes to understanding what they hear?
One of the biggest is the difference in sounds between Thai and English. Thai doesn't have some of the consonant clusters and vowel sounds that are common in English, so it can be difficult for learners to even hear the difference between words.
Right, and then you have connected speech. Native speakers blend words together, which can make it sound like a completely different language to someone learning English from textbooks.
Exactly. So how do we bridge that gap? How do we get those ears tuned in to the nuances of spoken English? Well, exposure is key. Immersing students in authentic listening. Podcasts, movies, songs, real conversations with different accents and speaking styles.
And are there strategies teachers can use to help students actively listen?
Think about pre-listening activities. Activate their prior knowledge. Discuss the topic beforehand. Introduce some key vocab, set a purpose for why they're listening, and then during listening, have them take notes, filling gaps, or even just answer simple questions to keep them focused.
Great tips. And I think it's important to remember that listening isn't passive. It takes effort and active engagement.
Couldn't agree more. Okay, so we've covered speaking and listening. Let's move on to reading. Now, a lot of people might think that reading is a strength for Thai learners, especially with the focus on written exams here. But is that always the case?
That's a good question. And to be honest, I think it's a bit of a misconception. Yes, Thai students do a lot of reading, but it's often passive. They're decoding the words, but not really understanding the meaning, not engaging with the text in a critical way.
I couldn't agree more. That's the challenge, isn't it? How do we go beyond just reading the words on the page and get them to really comprehend what they're reading?
Well, I think we need to make reading interactive, more engaging. Things like pre-reading discussions, having them predict what will happen, analyzing characters, even using creative writing prompts to get them thinking about the text on a deeper level.
Excellent point. And don't forget about the importance of choosing texts that are relevant to them, texts that are interesting. When they're invested in the material, they're much more likely to actively engage with it.
Right. Finding that sweet spot between challenge and enjoyment. Okay, last but not least, let's tackle writing. What are some common roadblocks that Thai learners face when it comes to writing in English?
Well, one of the biggest is the tendency to translate directly from Thai to English. This often leads to sentence structures that sound unnatural and grammatical errors.
Oh, I see this all the time. Students get so focused on finding the exact equivalent word or phrase that they lose sight of the overall meaning and flow of what they're writing.
And then there's the fear of making mistakes. Many Thai learners are so worried about being judged that they become hesitant to even try. They avoid taking risks.
It's like they're stuck in this cycle of perfectionism. So how can we help them overcome that fear and develop a more natural and confident writing style?
It starts with creating the right environment, a supportive and encouraging environment where mistakes are seen as part of the process.
Absolutely. And I think emphasizing the process of writing is key, not just focusing on that final product. Yeah. Guide them through brainstorming, outlining, drafting, revising, editing, all those steps.
Exactly. And giving regular feedback, both from the teacher and from their peers. This can help students see their strengths and areas where they can improve.
So we've explored the challenges that come with each of these four skills.
Yeah.
But now the big question. How do we effectively integrate them in the classroom? I know a lot of educators are probably feeling a bit overwhelmed, thinking, how am I supposed to fit all of this in?
I hear you. It can definitely feel daunting. But here's the good news. There are strategies that can make skill integration manageable, even fun.
Okay, I'm all ears. Tell me more.
One approach that's been getting a lot of attention is task-based language teaching, TBL for short.
TBL. Right. I've heard the term, but I'm not sure I could really explain it. What's the main idea behind TBL?
Basically, it's about designing tasks, meaningful tasks, that require students to use all four skills together.
So it's not just about memorizing grammar rules or practicing pronunciation in isolation.
Yeah.
They're actually using the language to do something.
Exactly. And the cool thing about TBL is that you can adapt it to any topic or any learning goal. Let's say you're teaching about travel.
Okay.
A TBL task could be having students plan a trip. They create an itinerary, present it to the class, answer questions from their classmates.
I see. That's so natural. They're reading out travel destinations, writing their itinerary, speaking during the presentation, listening to their peers. It's all connected.
Precisely. And because there's a real purpose, a clear outcome, students are more motivated. They're not just going through the motions. They're using the language to achieve a goal.
I'm getting it now. So are there other strategies besides TBL that teachers can use for this skill integration?
Definitely. Project-based learning is another great one. It's similar to TBL in that students work on these bigger projects that use all four skills. But with project-based learning, there's usually more in-depth research involved and a bigger emphasis on creativity and collaboration.
Okay, so what would that look like in a classroom? Give me an example.
Let's say your unit is on environmental issues. Students could research a specific problem, then design a whole campaign to raise awareness. They could create a website or make a video to share what they've learned and then present it to the school, maybe even the community.
Wow, that's ambitious. It's not just language skills they're developing, it's research skills, critical thinking, problem solving.
Exactly. And because it's something they care about, their motivation goes way up.
Okay, so we've got TBL, project-based learning. Anything else we should have in our teacher toolkit?
Don't forget about the power of storytelling. Stories are a natural way to bring all those skills together. Think about it. When we listen to a story, we're working on our listening comprehension. When we read a story, we're building fluency and vocabulary.
Right. And when we retell a story or write our own, that's speaking and writing practice.
That's so true. And stories, they can take us to different places, make us feel things, really spark our imagination. It's a magical way to learn.
Absolutely. And there are so many ways to use storytelling in the classroom. Read aloud to your students, have them create their own stories, use picture books as prompts, act out stories together.
These are all fantastic strategies. But I know what some of our listeners might be thinking, okay, this is great, but how do I actually find the time for all of this? I mean, our curriculum is already packed.
It's a real concern. Time is always a challenge for teachers. But here's the thing, skill integration doesn't have to be something extra you add on. It can be built into your existing lessons.
What do you mean? Give me some practical tips.
One way is to think about how you can tweak your current activities to include more than one skill. So if you're doing vocabulary, don't just have them write definitions. Have them use the words in sentences, create dialogues, even act out the words.
That's smart. It's about getting the most out of each activity. Exactly. And think about how you group students. Put strong writers with strong speakers. Have students with different learning styles work together.
That makes sense. Using the strengths of each student, creating those opportunities for them to learn from each other.
Right. And remember, you don't have to do it all at once. Start small, choose one strategy, get comfortable with it, then gradually add more.
This has been incredibly helpful. I feel like I have a whole new way of thinking about teaching language. But before we go any further, I want to bring it back to our listeners.
Yes, let's hear from you.
We really want to know your thoughts on skill integration. What are you struggling with when you try to balance the 4 skills in your classroom? What's working for you?
Share your experiences, your tips, down in the comments. We're all learning from each other here.
Speaking of learning, we have something really exciting coming up in our next episode.
Oh, this is a big one. We're diving into the world of AI and technology, looking at how these tools are changing the landscape of English language teaching.
It's a topic that's evolving so quickly. We can't wait to share our insights and get some discussions going.
Make sure you're following us on all our platforms, website, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, SoundCloud, and Spotify to stay up to date with LexTalk.
We'll remind you again at the end, but you don't want to miss this one. It's going to be a game changer.
Now, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's bring it back to today and what we've talked about.
Right. So we've established that balancing the 4 skills, speaking, listening, reading, and writing, is absolutely crucial for true fluency in English.
And it's not just about giving equal time to each skill. It's about understanding how they work together, how to weave them into meaningful learning experiences.
We've explored some practical strategies, things like task-based learning, project-based learning, the power of storytelling, all ways that teachers can create a more dynamic and engaging learning environment.
And remember, be adaptable. Recognize the different ways your students learn and create a space where they feel supported and appropriately challenged.
And like always, if you're looking for more information or resources on any of this, head over to our website. And don't forget to follow us on social media.
We're always posting new content and connecting with our amazing community there.
Absolutely. And if you have any questions or topics you'd like us to explore in future seasons, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Yes, we love hearing from you. We're always open to suggestions.
All right, before we wrap up, it's time for our motto.
Go for it.
Let's talk, let's learn, let's Lex talk.
And that's a wrap on season 1.
We'll see you next season. Don't forget to follow Lex Talk on all platforms. Our website, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, SoundCloud, and Spotify. You can find us at LexTalk Podcast.